Hello everybody, welcome back to Labz. This video is going to be a little bit different from my normal base building and playing with the zombies and trying to break AI. Today is going to be a little bit different. This is mostly for new players, but there's going to be a little bit of a discussion at the end of this, or towards the middle end, whatever, of this video about ways of balancing your game that maybe even players that have been playing for a while might be interested in, just to try and change up the flavor of 7 Days to Die. First off, let's get to the basics of what a game detail is. This is a menu that if you've been playing for this game for a long time, you know what this is. This is basically how you set your world up. You put your name here, basically that's going to be your save name, your game world, and basically you've got all of these choices. I've actually got several worlds I have created. Let me see, wait for it. Right here is actually where you could create your own seed. You can type in a whole bunch of numbers, you can give it a name, and this is kind of convenient if you're playing with other people. Say on my channel, I like to be able to let people play the maps that I am playing. Right now, my world generation seed is Mayhem 3. So if anybody else was to type this in, they would be playing on the same map. There's a couple of things that might change from seed to seed every time it generates, like the location of a trader, for instance. Not necessarily the location, but the trader that they send you to whenever you start the game out. And the reason for that is because it's got, I don't know, I looked at the file one time, it had like 20 different places your character can spawn on the map. So you might spawn in a different spot, in which case your first mission will be to go to probably a different trader. But in general, your map should be about the same. Server visibility, obviously you don't want to have your server where people can see it, unless of course you want people to play it. We're not really going to get into server stuff right now, basically because I really don't know that much about running a server, which is the reason why I absolutely adore Max, who handles just about everything that has to do with a server. I thank you again. Let's move on to the other stuff. This is the part that you really have to focus in on to tailor the game the way you want it. And we're going to discuss some of the things that this stuff changes and how it can affect your game, even in ways you didn't think it was going to affect. The difficulty setting, basically, you've got so many different settings, all the way from Adventurer, which is the default, all the way up to Insane. And essentially, the only thing that this changes about your game is how much damage you have to do to a zombie in order to kill it. As far as I know, it doesn't affect the damage of the weapon in particular, it just gives all the zombies more health. And in some cases, some people might think that that's a good thing. The zombies need to be difficult, in which case this is the setting that you need to change in order to make the zombies more difficult. Just remember, this affects all zombies, Horde Knight included, Demolishers, irradiated, the whole 9 yards. Across the whole palette, all of the zombies will become more difficult, including the creatures, the bears, the dogs, the everything. Hunting will be a little bit more difficult as well. The 24-hour cycle, you've got 60 minutes, and, well, that's an hour per day. That's your day cycle, your night cycle, all that's an hour. You can give yourself a lot of time. A lot of time! 2 hours in one day. Sounds awesome. The only problem is you have to remember that in this particular instance, your night cycle is going to be so long. Because at the very most, it will only make 18, unless you go in and play around with the XML file, or you're on a server that changes it for you. The nighttime is going to be a long time, so you're going to be stuck indoors during the first couple of weeks. Or the first week, rather. Kind of really not able to do anything for a long time, because there's not really anything you can do the first couple of days at night. But that much daytime means you can do a whole lot more raiding, you might get a lot more resources, possibly a lot more missions done. So I guess it all depends on your playstyle, on how you want to play. Later in game, this is actually a really good setting to play on, because you actually have a lot of things you can do at your base. You can work on your base. If you're close to your Horde base, you can work on your Horde base. You can get your inventory organized. You can do a lot of mining. But just remember that this thing has a double-edged sword, which is what I'm talking about whenever I say with these settings. All of these settings have a double-edged sword. 120 minutes sounds great until you have to do the night cycle. And remember, the Horde will last forever. I know I've played on 120 minutes before. The Horde night lasts a long time. Daylight length, obviously you can reduce the amount of hours you have in your day. If you're looking for a way to make your game more difficult, and you're not trying to record because recording and having very short days can kind of be a pain, you can make it more difficult by making it nighttime longer. And this could definitely amp up your game. You could change a couple of settings to counteract that a little bit, maybe. Take the, I don't know, the run speed of night zombies down a little bit. So I don't really understand why you would want to make it lower unless you're looking for more of a challenge. So I would just say take the daylight length down and then deal with the consequences of it, because you're obviously looking for a little bit more of a challenge there anyway. Blood moon frequency, we can go all the way to disabled. You can turn the blood moon off completely. There is a way in the game to turn the blood moon off. You will not have to worry about it at all. Just so that is stated. There is a way to turn that off for people who don't like doing Horde nights. You can also have it where it's like 1, 8, every 30 days. Once a month you'll have to deal with the zombies. So there's a lot of flexibility in all of that. Just remember, the longer you go in between your Horde nights, the more experience you're going to gain between your Horde nights. If you put it on 30 days, it sounds great. I'll only have to deal with them every 30 days, but think of all of the experience and therefore the higher game stage you are going to be at when you finally hit that first Horde. It will not be your regular first night Horde. It won't. Your game stage will be too high. So, I guess, pattern that the way you want to play the game. The ability to turn it off, the ability to give yourself 30 days, to make the days longer, all of those are great features. Just remember when you go to playing with the time, that whenever you have your Horde, it is affected by your game stage. If you're getting more experience, if you're giving yourself more time in between, the game stage is going to increase a lot more between Horde nights. Just keep that as an idea. Also, if you're looking for, I don't know, a bit of adrenaline, a bit of hair pulling, a bit of, I don't like myself today kind of situation, this thing actually gives you a blood moon range, which means you can fluctuate it all the way up to 20 days. Which means somewhere around the 7th day, 20 days before that, or 20 days after that, you could wind up with a blood moon Horde. You will never know when it's going to happen. Except that you can also turn on the blood moon warning, which will show up at 8 o'clock on Horde day. If you really, really don't like yourself, if you're really one of those masochists out there, you can turn your blood moon frequency up, turn the range up, turn off the warning. I'm just saying that's an option. I'm not saying it's a good option. I'm just saying it's an option. That's if you're crazy and if you don't like yourself and stuff like this, because in this particular instance, you really will not get a warning. The usual warning of the thunder crashing beforehand and the red skies, I don't know if you've played recently, but there have been several days that are just like random days where the night turns red. So those days I think are specifically designed to mess with people who have the range turned on and the warning turned off. I think that's probably the reason why that particular weather feature is there. So there is definitely the ability to never know when your Horde is coming. That probably adds a bit of, I don't know, scariness to the game that people probably aren't used to playing with. There are a few people that I watch on a regular basis. I would love for them to run with this feature where it fluctuates from day to day, and they turn off the warning. They just have to do what they can with what they've got. And this particular setting would actually make it to where your knowledge of a POI would come in handy. That you could run through a city and say, I know that one, I know that one, and I know that one, and that one's going to hold up the best. And you just run in there, do what you can in 5 minutes, because that's probably the only warning you will have. And that would be an interesting playthrough. The playthrough I'm doing right now for my live streams, which happen on Wednesdays, 3 or 3:30, I'm just keeping it there, 3 or 3:30 Eastern Standard Time, I have the Blood Moon Rage up to 3 days. so that it can fluctuate a little bit. I still have the warning on, but I have it where it can fluctuate just to kind of get a taste of this, to see how it affects the gameplay, what all you really have to deal with during all of this. But I do have the warning on, so I at least have that going for me. Also, if you are looking for a way to amplify your zombie experience without going full on, I have to empty an entire clip into the zombie kind of situation, possibly change their speed. I mean, they even break it down. You've got zombie day speed, night speed, feral speed, and blood moon speed. And every single one of these will go up to nightmare speed, which nightmare speed more or less matches you when you run out of stamina. Well, actually, I think it's when you're running full tilt, nightmare speed will match you. I think whenever my first playthrough was done, I was at nightmare speed, and when I ran out of stamina, that's when they caught me. So you could definitely change it up. You could turn the speeds up, and then after the speeds are up to where you're kind of comfortable with it and you're still saying, it's too easy, then turn the zombie damage up. And that will definitely give you that kind of zombie, these guys are crazy, run for my life kind of feel that you might be looking for. Also, this persistent profiles, player must keep their profile they first connect with set to on, off allowing them to change your player profile. Basically, if you want to use the exact same profile for all of your stuff. There's no reason to even have this on, because you basically stick around with the same profile as in your character look through all of your games anyway. You don't have to set that up every single time you go in there. I'm not sure exactly how this affects it, because it really doesn't change anyway. I would just leave it alone, leave it off. XP multiplier. In my recent game, I've got the XP up for reasons that I'll explain during the part where I talk about trying to balance your game. The XP multiplier, you could turn it all the way up to 300%. Sounds great. I would love to get more experience, more things I can build faster, but just remember, the more experience you get, the more levels you gain, and the higher the game stage is. So you might be getting extra experience, but your first horde, even just your first horde, is going to be harder than it should be because you gain the extra levels. It's not based on your day, it's based on your experience and your game stage. The difficulty setting also affects your game stage. That's what makes the zombies more difficult as well. So this one and this one, especially on this particular area, affect your game stage directly. So be very, very careful about that if you don't want to get hit. Say you want the harder game later on because you're more prepared. That's fine. You can actually go in and change these settings the longer you play. You can play for a while, get yourself set up. You can play for a while, get yourself set up, and after you kind of feel comfortable, your horde base is working for you and stuff like that, you can turn these things up and challenge yourself a little bit more. But just be careful during those first few days, the first week, however long your zombie experience before the horde is going to be. Be careful about getting too much experience during that time and jacking up your game stage before you're ready. So that's all I have to say about that particular group. Okay, there was a little bit of confusion, which is the whole reason why I decided to do this tutorial / talk about balancing your game situation, because there's a lot of people who talk about the game's too easy, or you could just do this. Well, this tells you where you can actually go in and change it, and maybe some ways of balancing it if you want to do it that way. Okay, player block damage. This directly affects you, the player, how much damage you do to a particular block with whatever tool it is you're using. You can take this all the way up to 300. And as far as I'm concerned, player block damage is just going to affect how quickly you harvest things. And while that sounds good, it also kind of kills the joy you might feel from getting, like, say, an auger or a tier 6 steel axe. It's like, well, I was one-shotting stuff before. What does it even matter if I have it now? So be careful about giving yourself too much of this. I can understand the lack of patience in breaking down a cardboard box. I have that. I am guilty of that. I have that condition as well. I lack patience. So I usually turn mine up, but to compensate, I also turn other things up to more difficult to try and balance my game. So maybe if you decide to mess around on this because you lack patience too, maybe not turn it all the way up, and maybe give something else the ability to do what you do. The AI block damage, basically zombies, wolves, bears, whatever, oh my, this is how much damage they can do to a block. And zombies really don't do a whole lot of damage to a block. Not really, not by themselves. So bumping that up's probably not a bad idea, especially if you're waiting forever for them to break through a door. So, I mean, it saves on your tool. You don't have to fix your tool if they broke through it for you. But then again, if you don't want to get scared by them popping out of something by themselves, maybe not turn it up. That's the balance there. The AI Blood Moon block damage. This affects everything that they can send at you during a Blood Moon, from the vultures, the irradiated creature, the wolves, the dogs, the whole 9 yards, the demolishers, everything that they can send at you on a Blood Moon, it amplifies the damage that they can do to whatever your Horde base is. So be very, very careful with this one, because not only can they do that individually, there is also a mechanic that's in the game but not well defined. But when you have a group of zombies that get together and start banging on something, there is basically a Horde mentality. Their strength that goes up a little bit, and they do more block damage together. What that percentage is, I don't know exactly, and honestly, I don't even know if it's in this alpha. I know it was in the last alpha. I guess if anybody has the ability to go through the XML files to find out whether or not that is still a thing, I think it is, because I noticed during the Horde on the server that I had to deal with, they did seem to be doing more damage than the normal zombies I ran over the Horde base, which I'll be showing in one of the Liz labs pretty soon, just not yet. So just be careful about giving them too much damage if you're looking for a little bit extra. I don't know, they're not doing enough during a Horde night. You're making it out somehow or another, very little damage on your base, and you really want to amp them up. If you amp up their speed and their block damage, you're going to have an interesting night. So that's what that affects. And loot abundance sounds great. Sounds great. Be careful with this one. Just be careful with this one. It's too easy to get a whole bunch of loot and get OP in the game, and then suddenly you're like, I don't even know what to do anymore. I have everything. So be very careful with giving yourself too much loot. If you're planning on a quick game, say, okay, whenever my character dies, I'm stopping. So I'm gonna make the AI damage really, really high. The zombies are gonna be high speed. Just going to go full tilt on this game just to see how difficult you can make it. I would recommend doing something like turning up the loot abundance, because that would balance itself out, but it's very, very easy to become overpowered and really bored with this setting, so be careful about using that one. I wouldn't recommend going above 150, especially with the way the alpha is now. Now, if they balance out the loot table a little bit later on, then this would probably not be needed at all. But right now, every bit of food helps. I'll be honest with you guys, so you're not going to get any judgment from me if you turn that up, because food is hard right now. I get it. Loot respawn. You can have it all the way from 5 days to 50 days. Now, this one only rarely affects people, because how often do people have a chance to go back and re-loot something? That's basically what it is, the timer before the loot respawns in all of the containers. It doesn't refresh the entire POI. For those of you who haven't played the game, it's just the loot inside the containers. The packages that you break, that actually pop open into a little bag or whatever, it's not going to remake the container. It's just the actual containers, like the cabinets and stuff like that, that will get new loot in them. This is another thing. With the loot abundance, say you turn it all the way up to 300 and you have the respawn time on 5 days. It is going to be so easy to get way overpowered and get bored with the game. Just remember, part of the game is struggling for it. So while you don't want to struggle so much that you get irritated and want to quit the game, you don't want to give yourself too much and get OP and then not want to play the game anymore. Find your balance whenever it comes to those settings. Just be very careful with those. Drop on death. Basically, anytime you die, your bag drops. Everything that you had in your inventory will be inside that bag. Lately, ever since it happened to me on one of my earlier playthroughs, the bag disappeared. And I watched videos, and a lot of other people's disappeared. So I started putting no drop on death. That's just me personally. I'm just not. Maybe when the full game comes out and that bug doesn't appear anymore. As far as I know, it was fixed, but even after they told me it was fixed, I had turrets that were disappearing through the planet. God rest the manager's soul. He is still somewhere beneath the Crack-a-Book Tower, We will not talk about that. But while things are still disappearing through the planet, I will not turn that on. For those of you who like the idea of there being an extreme consequence to your death, I would definitely say turn that on. Having to go back into a bad situation to try and retrieve your loot does have an appeal if you're looking for that extra bit of danger. Drop on quit. I can't see a reason why you would want to do that. And it gives you options. Tool belt, which is your little belt of stuff that you have, your important things that you keep on your hotbar. The backpack, only the stuff that you carried in your backpack, you'll keep your tool belt. Or you could drop everything. Why you would want to use this, I don't really know. I can't see a reason why this would be on. I'm trying really hard to think of a reason. I can't. Let me know in the comment section if you could think of a reason why you would play with this on. Blood moon count. This one you can have between 4 and 64 enemies. Be very careful with this setting. Be very, very careful. 64 zombies on a blood moon during a high tier when you've got your awesome weapons and you want to send the biggest, the baddest force at your Horde base just to see if it can last. The Horde base may not be the problem. The zombies may not be the problem. Your computer crashing could be the problem. I tried that on my live stream for the last season, and it crashed my game. So be very careful with that. This game is very CPU intensive. It's very intensive on your computer in general. So if you are not running a beast of a computer, I would not try 64 zombies. Even if it sounds cool and you want to be a bad A, and you want to go after that many zombies, I still wouldn't recommend it just because it can crash your game, so be very careful with that. I would recommend, rather than doing more zombies, make the zombies harder. And they'll be less, but it'll take a lot more to kill them, and you can turn their block damage up along with it, and still not crash your computer. Enemy respawning, or enemy spawning, you can actually turn that off. No enemies in the world, ever. It would be a very boring game. It would be nice if this was a little bit more toggles in there, like there is on the tool belt when you drop on quit, which makes no sense. But this one right here doesn't have anything for toggling. And not just for making the game easier, I mean for making the run style of your game easier. Like, right now there are more zombies in the world right now, because there's more wandering hordes, and I think, you know, the Fun Pimps realized that people enjoyed that aspect. It actually felt like a zombie apocalypse, running into all of these things and seeing more hordes. It's awesome. But if you're working on a computer that's got limited, you know, limited ability like mine does, occasionally it can lag your computer out, having that many random AIs wandering around and getting themselves trapped in random places. So maybe halvening the amount or something like that. A little bit more play right here would be great. But like I said, I mean, you could have basically your character would be running the whole time, but it would be like all the zombies moved on to another area. You could turn off your Horde Night, you could turn off the enemy spawning. It's going to be a very boring game, but you can do it. But if you're going to do that, you might as well turn it on creative. I mean, if it seems like you're probably just there to build anyway, I would just turn it on creative, because there is a way to do that. Airdrops, you can get them never, or you can get them every day to every 7 days. Airdrops are alright. I really don't have a problem with airdrops, but on a server they become very, very frustrating because it's like, it drops really far away from you really don't have time to get it, and after a while they start adding up. It's like, geez, I gotta go make a round for all these daggum airdrops. And not every single time has really good loot in it. Cheat mode. This is basically turning on and off the creative from this menu. So you have a character you just want to build with. You don't want to do the survival thing, you just want to build. You would turn this on, you would have access to the whole creative menu. You have all of the blocks, ones that we're allowed to have in-game and ones we're not allowed to have. You'll have developer tools. Basically, the whole world is your oyster in the game. There's just a couple of things that it doesn't give you access to. Not very many. Right now the K menu is out, but I think they have a way of turning it on in the XML. They just turned it off for some reason. I don't really know why, because that was the menu that you used to bring in POIs, your personally made POIs that you wanted to bring into the world. So I don't know why they turned it off, assuming there's some kind of issue with it. But other than that, being able to clear out an area, you won't be able to do that. But you'll have all of the blocks to work with. I would definitely recommend going in and getting the developer tools if you are wanting to build like that, because it makes it a whole lot easier if you're just wanting to build. Sometimes you just want to build, sometimes you just want to create. Some people need that outlet. So don't be ashamed of having a creative profile on yours just to play around with the blocks and have fun with. Or, in my case, blowing up towers without getting yourself into trouble. Alright, and you can also, I don't know why these two are so far away, don't ask me. Marking the airdrops, you can turn them off and on. I can't think of a reason why you would turn them off. I have seen quite a few people accidentally not turn them on, and you can't ever find the daggum things. So basically it puts the marker, whenever there's an airdrop, it puts the marker on your map on where you can find it. So that's something you could turn off if you really want it to be, for it to be immersive. Whenever you were actually in a zombie apocalypse and somebody dropped heavenly loot down at you, they wouldn't mark it on your map. Some ethereally, that's not a word. Yeah, let me just make up my own words. Basically, you're not walking around with a PDA. They can't update the map for you. So if you're not wanting to break immersion, you can turn it off. You would actually have to visually see where they're dropping it on the map and try and mark where you think it was at and then go look for it. So I can see why you would probably turn that off if you were going for the immersion factor. Okay, then we've got the multiplayer stuff. Not everybody plays with multiplayer blocks, but there are still single player aspects that are in here that you're probably going to want to know about. You got the option of turning off and on PvP. If you want to be able to kill your friends that come on there with you, you would want to turn that on. Or if you accidentally wind up killing each other during a Horde night, sometimes it leads to laughs and sometimes people get irritated. Who knows? Just depends on the day. Claim size. This affects the size of the block that you have, your land claim device. It affects how big of an area. You can even use this in a single player game if you want to expand the size of your base. I tend to turn mine up because I like bigger bases, and I cannot lie. So I will not deny wanting to build a bigger base. I like playing around with the bases. I like building. If you're wanting to make it a smaller, confined area and stuff like that, you can shrink it down. The dead zone is 30 blocks. Okay, let me make sure I'm getting this right. Okay, that has to do with the dead zone is one land claim block to another land claim block. And I think this also affects maybe the trader area too. You can't lay your land claim block within a certain distance from the trader. I think this affects it, but it doesn't actually say that. So if you're doing a multiplayer map or a server map, this would affect how close together your land claim devices can be. You don't want them too close together because, well, you're going to have like a dead zone of zombies in between. This allows zombie spawn in between your two areas, if that makes any sense. The claim duration, that's still an online thing if you have a server and you have a player that's been on but hasn't been back in forever. And they've got some prime real estate. I'm talking about they've got the best house, but they haven't been on in forever and they have said, I'm not coming back. Well, in 7 days, the block will break and someone else can claim the area. If you're playing on a server where not everybody has the time and stuff like that, you might want to turn the claim duration up, because their base will actually take damage if you are not careful during that 7-day period. They will actually take damage. So that's what this decay mode is they can actually decay their land claim and their building. They will actually have to come back and fix their building. So be very careful about those settings. Make sure that whenever you get a server, you go back into the XML file and fix those. Claim health online. Basically, if you're on a server, can you gain health while you're out of your character? Yes, I would definitely, if you're on a server, whenever you're logged off, your character can gain health. That way when you come back in, you hit the ground running and not realize, oh yeah, last time I played, I was at like 2 health and I just ran out my door and ran into a horde. Probably not the best way to start a server day. Claim offline. Oh, okay, from online to offline, it's whether or not there's a cooldown between your online and offline type of setting. Bedroll, dead zone. Be very careful. For some reason, whenever there's a server in the XML files, and this is talking to people who play on servers, I don't know that much about servers, but this part I do know. In the XML files, for some reason, every time you set a world up, the bedroll dead zone is set to -1. Why it starts that way, I don't know. fix it, because you're going to need your land claim block, and you're going to need your bedroll to keep zombies away from you. You don't want to accidentally have it on -1, and your sleep and roll is not actually helping you day one keep the zombies out of your building, because you're going to want them not to respawn on you. And the bedroll duration, same thing as the claim block, and that way people are not claiming your area, your bedroll, and stuff like that. And just so you know, if you're playing on multiplayer, that if you have a character and you guys are goofing off and there's a bit of PvP and someone gets irritated and kills your bedroll, you will respawn in a bad place. Sorry. It didn't happen in this server, guys. Don't worry about it. Party share killed range. Whenever you're playing multiplayer or server, you can party up and you will share experience within a certain amount of meters. You can make it, what's the top one on there? 10,000 meters. So it's not unlimited. You can't be on the other side of the map from each other. That's a lot of distance, actually. But you've got to kind of... I would keep this. This can get very OP, because if you're sharing experience, you're also increasing each other's... you're increasing the experience past what you probably want to. Playing multiplayer, it's very, very easy to get OP. It's very, very easy to get your game stage increased to the point to where hordes are overwhelming, even at the earliest of times. So be very careful about sharing the XP. That may not even be needed. Just so you know, you'll probably both get it, unless you're doing things like sharing the load out of work. Say one of your characters is the stealth killer and your other one is the tank, and one of you is specializing in this aspect, like building, and the other one's doing the mining. You might want to share some of the experience to keep it even out, because as I have noticed during one of my initial playthroughs on a server, we had a lot of characters who did a whole lot of scouting and a whole lot of stuff bringing it back and things like that. They didn't do a ton of missions that I know of. They just scouted for stuff and brought it back. They weren't gaining a whole lot of experience. I was sitting back and making the Horde base, and I gained so much experience just from building. And if anybody had been near me, they would have gained some of that experience too. That way, whenever the Horde came, I wasn't dragging in a massive Horde and the other characters hadn't even leveled as much as I had. So be very careful and be very wary of that if you're doing multiplayer and stuff like that. If you're specializing that way, share the experience. If you're kind of running in tandem and searching buildings, POIs, building together, mining together, the whole 9 yards, you probably don't need to share the experience. It might get y'all in a bit of trouble. Now, let's go back. I've already talked for 30 minutes about all of that. Let's very quickly talk about balancing your game. The biggest problem with this game right now is it feels very... the end of the game feels blah, which we already know why. This game is not done. As a matter of fact, we are in alpha, we're in experimental alpha, but the game isn't complete. And the Fun Pimps are not going to fix the end of the game until they're ready to, because they don't want to spoil any of the storyline, any of the ending quests or anything like that. They're not going to spoil that, and I would expect nothing otherwise from them, because there has to be a reason whenever the final product comes out for people to want to play it. So I'm anxious for that story, but I'm willing to wait. So the question is, how do you keep your character from getting too OP but still enjoying yourself? A couple of thoughts. Every time you turn a setting up to your benefit, give the bad guys a setting. Like, here, I turn my block damage. The block damage starts at 100. No, it actually goes through 2 clicks. Do y'all start out? Yeah, that was 2 clicks. Okay. Whenever I turn my block damage up, I turn on the AI block damages up too. Whenever I, okay, whenever I decide I want to play it on a normal setting, I make the daytime speed, the normal zombies, a little bit faster, and trust me, jog is way doable. Basically, it's less than, you know, whenever you smack a zombie in the head and he sprints at you a little bit? That jog is like the shuffle beforehand, if you know what I'm saying. It's not a full-on sprint towards you like a feral will. It's manageable. So if you wanted to do that, that would probably help. Whenever you want to, say, turn up... let me see, what's another good one? Say you want to turn up your experience and your loot, because you want to gain a whole lot, but you I mean, and you want to get a whole bunch of stuff, and you're just ready for that part of the game. You just really want that section of the game. So what are some things you could do to counteract those? The XP multiplier, let's see, try giving them a bit more speed. So if you want the experience and you want the loot, make it to where your character, while you're going to get the experience, you're going to get some really good experience, and you're going to get some really good loot. You're going to have to work for it. And turn off the looting, or turn up the looting. Like, the looting is set on, loot respawn is on 30 days. So you can turn it all the way up to 50 days. Or turn it off, in general. If you're getting a ton of loot, especially if you decide to go crazy, and you wanted, like, tons of experience, and then you wanted, all of the loot, well, then turn off the loot respawn. Turn up the speed of the zombies. Okay? And try it that way and see if that helps you out. That way, it's like, yes, I'm getting tons of experience, I'm getting tons of loot, I'm having to work really, really hard in order to get it. I would not recommend nightmare speed, except for maybe on ferals and Blood Moon, because then it kind of kills it for the rest of the game. It's like, they're always moving at that speed. Always. So there's no transition, no fear factor for when you run into those specific type of zombies. You're going to want the Blood Moon speed higher. You're going to want the ferals to move faster. So if you have them all on Nightmare and everybody's moving fast all the time, I don't know. To me, that would kind of kill it. But maybe for you, that might be something you want to do. It'd be interesting to see a horde of zombies moving at nightmare speed across the landscape, and the only thing you can do is just watch them as they disappear into the distance and say, thank God they didn't come my way. Also, if you're really looking for a challenge, you could turn up their speed, and you could turn up their block damage. So not only would they run really fast, they would also chew through a building in no time. It would actually be interesting to see that. How fast would they chew through, would a roaming horde chew through a building just because the building was in the way? Huh. It's actually kind of curious. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, that is pretty much it. I just wanted to go over these settings because there seemed to be some confusion about what these settings did. And for new players, old players, people who didn't know that these settings were in here and what they did specifically, or hadn't thought about how to balance them out better, there's your answers. There's all the settings on how to make the game more difficult, on how to make the game easier, or to turn the game into a building simulator, basically. There's nothing wrong with that. If you enjoy building with the blocks, then build with the blocks. There is nothing wrong with that at all. Sometimes you just need to build. You need the creative outlet, and you want to experience it in a post-apocalyptic world instead of Minecraft. And that's fun too. So, yeah, you could just go in here to the cheat mode, and that would give you that option. You could turn off your zombies altogether. You'll be in the world. You'll be doing whatever you want to do. There's also ways of making it complete and utter heck. So, I mean, if you are looking for a challenge, this is only if you're looking for a challenge, and I direct this towards so many people I know right now. This is my challenge to you, and if you're watching, you know who you are. My challenge would be go survivalist, because I usually see you play on warrior. I would say lessen the daylight cycle by a little bit. Not a whole lot, just a little bit, because then that gets you off kilter. People are used to playing at a certain time, and you kind of get in that rhythm. So get out of the rhythm just a little bit. Then turn the blood moon frequency, I don't know, let's go 5 days. But then increase the range. 4 days, 7 days, and turn off the warning. No warning at all. I want to see you try that. Maybe even turn the speed up. How about we turn the speed up? Let's not go to nightmare. Let's not go crazy. Let's not go stupid. Turn them up to sprinting, blood moon speed, nightmare, feral speed, nightmare. There is your challenge. And I think I'm going to end it there. There's a lot more things you could actually do with this. If you really wanted to take that one and make it even worse, you could turn your XP multiplier off. Like, turn it down to 25%. That would make the Horde Knight very, very easy. Except for the fact that they are moving 5,000 miles a minute. And they're extremely hard to kill. And you didn't even know Horde Knight was coming. So that would be the most, I don't know, intense thing I could possibly think of for somebody to do. And I would love to see somebody play on this. The only thing I would allow is turning the loot abundance up, because you're gonna need the tools, because you're not gonna get the experience to build them yourself. It will happen. There are ways of gaining experience in this game that have nothing to do with these particular settings. the main methods for getting loot. Definitely doing the trading. The main methods for getting the experience actually are building and digging. So if you're a builder, if you're a digger, that would actually probably work for you. Having zombies moving at nightmare speed and falling in the pit with you would be terrifying. So anyway, that is all I have to say about that. I would never play on these settings. I like myself too much for this. I honestly do. But if there's somebody who is actually up to the challenge, I would love to watch that playthrough. I want to see that. Somebody do that, not me. I'm a chicken. I'm not doing that. Anyway, I will see you next time. You have a wonderful day, a wonderful night, and you stay shiny.